It shouldn't take you longer than 30 seconds to realize that you are in a unique land while walking the streets of Havana, Cuba. The pounding sounds of the American V8s transport you to the 1950s, while the chrome and white wall tires scream vintage. These Cuban pieces place you in a land that time forgot, a land 90 miles off the east coast of Florida. Vieja is Spanish for old, and Havana Vieja is the oldest part of the city. And with the lift of the Cuban embargo, it won't be long before it's a major tourist attraction. My name is Navarro, and as a second-generation Cuban, my goal today is to take you through a day of growing up Cuban. From the cultural traditions of dominoes and cigars, to the religious entities of Catholicism, and finally, the divine cuisines revolving around all Cuban kitchens. Picture a beautiful sunny day, wandering around Havana Vieja. A short walk down the main road brings us to Plaza de Armas, a famous square that hosts a second-hand book market where you can purchase used books revolving around the Cuban Revolution. To your left, you hear a boisterous cluster of older gentlemen with an infectious laughter positioned around a table with rustic chairs. Their method of a good time is dominoes, a popular Cuban game and great pastime. Similar to playing cards, dominoes are used to play over 20 different styles of games. Commonly referred to as bones, dominoes stem from the 12th century China and has its own game language that all players abide by. For instance, the player who puts their final domino piece on the table at the end of the game will shout victoriously, "Me pegué." It's not uncommon for these gentlemen to spend their entire evenings surrounded by good friends playing lengthy game after game. Now, if you were to close your eyes for a second, you would inhale deeply and take in many scents of Havana Vieja. The salty air blowing in from the bay, a bakery next door pulling out the freshest of Cuban breads, and the aroma of another well-known Cuban phenomenon, Cuban cigars. Cuba is notorious for their fine and flavorful tobacco worldwide. Historians can confirm that the first plantation surfaced in 18th century near the east of the island and gradually spread to the west. To the local natives who dubbed it cohiba, tobacco was a miraculous medicine and an essential element to religious, political, and social ceremonies, as well as an important factor to their agriculture. Now, believe it or not, cigars are also an important factor to my childhood. My siblings and I used to love rummaging through my grandfather's car looking for loose change that spilled from his mechanic pants. The strong and ever-present scent of engine oil combined with the sweet yet stout smell of his favorite cigar is a fragrance I'll choose over any designer perfume. Bringing us back to our imaginative tour, we can step away from Plaza de Armas and travel a short while north to the Cathedral de San Cristobal de Havana. Now, the Jesuits began construction of this church in 1748 and was completed in 1787. It became one of the oldest cathedrals in the Americas. As massive and righteous as the cathedral is, there is still one symbol that is strong and capable enough to unite Cubans, and that is the Virgin of Charity of El Cobre, patron saint of Cuba. The Virgin of Charity is a statue that stands 16 inches high and comes with an astounding derivation. The head is made of baked clay covered with a polished coat of white powder, possibly rice paste, and until recently was covered with several layers of paint. She stands atop a moon with silvery clouds, and on either side are 3 winged golden cherubs. She cradles the Christ child in her left arm and holds a gold crucifix in her right hand. The child raises one hand in blessing, and in the other hand he holds a globe. The story says that the statue was found around 1912 by 3 local fishermen. 2 were brothers named Rodrigo and Juan de Joya, and the other was a small boy believed to be between 9 and 10 age, and his name was Juan Moreno. They had gone searching by boat for salt in the Bay of Nipe. Salt was used to preserve their meats in their local town, so it was very important. The young boy began to pray to a necklace he wore around his neck of the Virgin Mary when the weather took a turn for the worst. As the young boy continued to pray and find peace within the Virgin Mary, the sun suddenly shone through the clouded sky and the storm calmed. When they looked around, they saw the tiny statue floating in the sea that is now adored by millions at the Memorial of El Cobre in the province of Santiago de Cuba. Religious roots run deep within the veins of Cuban citizens. This is due in part to the island being stripped of its religious freedoms once Castro came into power in 1959. His Holiness John Pope II made a historic visit to Cuba in 1998. This visit was historic not only because it was the first visit of a successor to St. Peter to the nation of Cuba and its people, but also because of the spiritual state of the church at the end of the 20th century. Not only were church properties confiscated, but also its religious personnel were barred from the island, and its faithful followers were prosecuted. Those who professed the Roman Catholic faith were frequently denied schooling and employment. The church itself was prohibited from conducting public worship and ceremonies. In 1969, the government went as far as declaring Christmas a non-public holiday. It was after 39 years of reparation and hostility that His Holiness came to Cuba as a messenger of peace and truth. In consideration of his visit, the government reestablished Christmas as a public holiday. With his visit, Pope John Paul II brought hope not only to the Roman Catholic clergy, religious and faithful which remained on the island, but also to many millions who came to see him in the various public masses and celebrations at which he presided. Now nearing the end of our tour, I'd like to take you through one of my favorite childhood locations, my mother's kitchen. My entire childhood memories are filled with the zesty aroma of my favorite foods: arroz con picadillo, ropa vieja, papas rellenos, frijoles negros, and my longtime favorite, yuca frita. I remember the vibrant salsa music streaming from my mom's tiny little clock radio and her moving in time to the beat while stirring a huge vat of stew, thick with the flavorful produce of her native land. The aromatic joys of my mother's kitchen were no match for the taste they brought. My taste buds would jump for joy as my tongue did somersaults around each bite. The ethnic blend of salt, oregano, pepper, cumin, and bay leaves mixed with the bitter tang of orange and onions were meticulously mixed for a pleasurable taste. These ingredients are well known in all Cuban dishes. Now, to not sound biased of the dishes made by my favorite person, my friends too would come over just for a sample. "Dominique, is your mom making dinner today?" they'd ask. "Of course, come over," I would always respond. It was never a dull dinner in my childhood household. Breakfast, on the other hand, was a little more mellow. On the weekends, we would wake after the sun when I could hear my great-grandmother Rosa bustling around in the kitchen. She lived for making us pancakes, or panque, as she liked to pronounce. Being a traditional Cuban, she always had a pot of coffee on the stove, and her mug sitting next to it teeming with sugar. Although I was never allowed my own steaming mug of café cubano until I was older, she would pretend to look the other direction just so I could get a whiff and maybe steal a sip or two. When she had the café going, she would begin her pan tostado, or toasted bread. Now, this is not an ordinary sandwich bread shoved into a toaster and slathered with butter. No, this is a long Cuban loaf and topped with mayonnaise, preferably from Cuba. This ritual of un cafecito con pan tostado is one that I still practice today. I am proud to stand before you today with my heart on my sleeve and walk you through these animated memories, tales, and historical facts. If there's one thing that my big fat Cuban family has taught me, it is that whatever path I choose in my life, whether professional or personal, I do so with confidence that exudes the flavorful traditions of my ancestors. I challenge you now to take what you have learned today of my country and the culture of the 147-year-old country and blend it with your own. As they say where I'm from, hasta la próxima.